The summer sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the sleepy town, when Jack eased his battered pickup into the gravel lot of the old gas station. His flannel shirt hung open, sleeves rolled up to fend off the sticky evening heat, and his 8-year-old son, Ben, sat in the back seat, sketching superheroes in a worn notebook. The fuel pump clicked lazily, each tick marking time in the quiet dusk. Jack's eyes wandered, catching sight of a woman at the next pump, her cream-colored dress glowing faintly under the station's flickering lights. Her face was buried in her hands, shoulders trembling, not just crying, but breaking, as if the weight of the world had finally crushed her spirit. The scene felt like something you'd see on MidnightTales, where raw, human moments unfold in unexpected places, pulling you into stories that linger long after the screen fades. Jack didn't know her name, didn't know her story, but he recognized the kind of pain that makes you feel invisible. 5 years ago, he'd been there himself, after losing his wife in a car accident that turned his world upside down. Raising Ben alone, scraping by on odd jobs, he'd learned what it meant to carry a quiet ache no one else could see. Most people would have turned away from the woman's grief. Strangers' pain is messy, complicated, easy to ignore. But Jack wasn't most people. Something in the slump of her shoulders, the way her hands shook, told him she was at a breaking point no one should face alone. He hesitated, glancing at Ben, who was lost in his drawings, then stepped toward her. His boots crunched softly on the gravel. "Mom, you okay?" he asked, voice low and steady, like he was trying not to spook a startled deer. She didn't look up, just shook her head, her silent sobs cutting through the hum of the gas station. No words, just raw, unspoken sorrow. Jack didn't push. He'd learned long ago that sometimes people need space before they need answers. Instead, he reached into the cooler in his truck, pulled out a bottle of cold water, and offered it to her. "Take your time," he said gently, his tone carrying the warmth of someone who'd been through his own storms. "No rush." He stood there, not too close, giving her room to breathe, to exist in her pain without judgment. It was the kind of moment MidnightTales might capture, a fleeting connection between strangers, where kindness becomes a lifeline in the dark. Eventually, her hands fell from her face, revealing eyes red and weary, but grateful for the small gesture. Her voice cracked as she spoke, barely above a whisper. She'd lost her husband 3 months ago, she said. The bills had piled up like a mountain she couldn't climb, and she'd been driving for hours, no destination in mind, just running from the weight of it all. The gas station was just a pause, a place to catch her breath, but the grief had spilled over, too heavy to hold back. Jack listened, nodding, his own heart tightening as her words echoed his own losses. He shared his story, not to one-up her pain, but to let her know she wasn't alone. He told her about losing his wife, about raising Ben on his own, about the odd jobs, fixing fences, hauling lumber, that kept a roof over their heads. His voice was steady, but his eyes carried the same ache she did, a silent understanding that bound them in that moment. They didn't exchange names or numbers. There was no grand gesture, no cinematic promise to stay in touch. Just two strangers at a gas station, finding solace in the simple truth that someone still cared. She thanked him, clutching the water bottle like it was more than just plastic and liquid, and drove off into the night. Jack watched her taillights fade, then climbed back into his truck, ruffling Ben's hair as they headed home. The encounter felt like something out of a MidnightTales episode, where ordinary moments turn extraordinary, not because of drama, but because of the quiet power of human connection. The next morning, Jack was out back, wrestling with a broken fence post under the relentless sun. Sweat dripped down his brow as he hammered nails into splintered wood, his mind still drifting to the woman from the night before. He wondered where she was, if she'd found a sliver of peace. The sound of tires crunching gravel snapped him out of his thoughts. A car pulled into his driveway, a familiar cream-colored dress catching his eye through the windshield. It was her. She stepped out, looking less fragile than the night before, though her eyes still carried a quiet sorrow. "I didn't know how to thank you," she said, her voice stronger now, like she'd found a foothold in her grief. "But last night, you reminded me life's worth fighting for. I want to help you fight for yours." She handed him a folder, her hands steady but her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Jack opened it, his breath catching as he saw the contents: a house deed, paid in full, with his name on it. His knees buckled, the weight of the gesture hitting him like a tidal wave. "I can't take this," he stammered, shaking his head. "It's too much." She smiled, a small, determined curve of her lips. "You can," she said firmly. "Last night, you gave me hope. Today, I'm giving it back." It was the kind of twist that would leave Midnight Tales viewers stunned, a moment where kindness circles back in ways no one could predict. Jack stood frozen, the folder trembling in his hands. He'd spent years scraping by, living in a rented trailer that creaked in the wind, always one bad month away from losing it all. Now, this stranger had handed him a future he'd never dared dream of, a home for him and Ben, a place to build memories without the constant threat of eviction. He tried to speak, to thank her, but the words caught in his throat. She didn't wait for them. With a nod, she got back in her car and drove away, leaving Jack standing in the dust, clutching the deed like it was a lifeline. Months later, Jack would stand on the porch of that new home, watching Ben chase fireflies across the yard, their laughter filling the warm evening air. The house was modest but solid, with a wraparound porch and windows that let in the morning light. Every creak of the floorboards, every glow of the fireflies, felt like a gift. He'd think back to that night at the gas station, to the woman whose name he never learned, and marvel at how a single moment of compassion had changed everything. It wasn't just the deed, though that was life-altering. It was the reminder that even in your darkest hour, a stranger's kindness can light the way forward. It was a story Midnight Tales would tell with heart, a tale of two souls crossing paths, each saving the other without even realizing it. The woman, wherever she was, had found her own spark of hope that night. Jack's simple act, offering water, a listening ear, had been enough to pull her back from the edge. And in return, she'd given him a foundation, not just for a house, but for a future. Jack didn't know if she'd ever see the fireflies in his yard, or hear Ben's laughter, but he hoped she'd found her own moments of joy, her own reasons to keep going. The gas station, once just a pit stop, had become a turning point, a place where two broken hearts found a way to heal, if only for a moment. As the months turned into years, Jack and Ben made that house a home. Ben's drawings covered the fridge, superheroes giving way to sketches of their new life, the porch, the yard, the fireflies. Jack took on steadier work, no longer scrambling to make ends meet. He'd tell Ben stories about that night, not to dwell on the past, but to teach him that kindness, no matter how small, can ripple outward in ways you can't imagine. It was a lesson he hoped Ben would carry into the world, just as Jack had carried it that evening at the gas station. Sometimes, late at night, Jack would sit on the porch with a cup of coffee, staring out at the stars, and think about the woman in the cream-colored dress. He'd wonder where she was, if she'd found peace, if she knew how much her gift had changed their lives. He'd never gotten her name, but he didn't need it. She was part of their story now, woven into the fabric of their home, their laughter, their hope. It was the kind of story that would resonate on Midnight Tales, where the smallest acts of humanity shine brightest against the backdrop of the ordinary. A bottle of water, a few quiet words, a moment of connection in a gas station lot. Sometimes, that's all it takes to plant a seed that grows into something far greater than you could ever imagine.